The day my mother married Ron, the house went quiet in a way that didn't make any damn sense. It wasn't silence, it was pressure, like the air itself was holding its breath. I used to wake up to my mom humming in the kitchen, her voice soft and messy, the kind of hum someone does when they're happy without thinking. But after Ron moved in, the mornings felt staged. She still hummed sometimes, but the sound was thinner, like she was scared of being too loud. And me? I learned real fast that my footsteps mattered. How loud they were, where I walked, whether Ron could hear me. I was 12, old enough to understand when a man in your house doesn't like you, but too young to understand why. The first week he was there, he said to me, "You walk heavy." Not in a joking way, not in a playful dad joke way, in a way that made my spine lock up. Then he added, "Try to be lighter. This isn't a barn." It wasn't the words, it was his tone. Cold, flat, like I was something he had to tolerate. Mom laughed a little too loudly. "Oh, Ron, she's just a kid." He cut her off with this look, just a tiny shift of his jaw. And my mom's smile died like someone flipped a switch. That was the first time I saw her bend for him. It wouldn't be the last. The thing about Ron was that he knew how to look good to the outside world. The neighbors thought he was charming, a real stand-up guy, hardworking, kind. My mom's coworkers said she was lucky to have found a man after so many years alone. Alone. As if being alone with your kid wasn't a real life. But inside our house, Ron was a different creature. Quiet, calculated, watching everything. He'd say little things that never sounded like insults until I was alone in my room replaying them. "Hair like yours needs more effort. You eat like you don't know when to stop. You're a little dramatic, aren't you?" Always said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The worst part? Mom started repeating him. "Maybe try harder with your hair, sweetie. Ron says we should all eat healthier. He thinks you could be more respectful." I didn't know it then, but I was losing her inch by inch, comment by comment, piece by piece. I first saw something illegal when I was 13. Ron thought I was asleep. I wasn't. I'd come downstairs because I heard voices, low, angry whispering, the kind that vibrates through walls. I peeked around the corner and saw Ron at the kitchen table with two men I'd never seen before, stacks of cash spread out like playing cards. One guy was counting. Ron was signing something. The third packet had a different color band, darker, almost oily looking. Drugs. I knew even before I understood. Ron kept glancing toward the hallway, like he felt me watching. And then he did. His head snapped to the side, eyes locking straight on me, like he could see through the dark. I froze. He didn't yell, didn't threaten, didn't even stand up. He just held my gaze and tapped one finger on the table, slow and deliberate, like a warning. One of the men said, "Problem?" Ron smiled. "No problem, just a kid." But his eyes didn't leave mine. Not once. I stumbled back up the stairs, heart in my throat. I didn't sleep that night, just stared at the ceiling waiting for the door to my room to open. It didn't. But from that night on, the house didn't feel like a house anymore. It felt like a trap. Little things started disappearing from my room. My diary, a necklace from my dad, $5 from my drawer. I asked Mom about it, and she said, "Maybe you misplaced them, honey. Don't accuse people." But the way she said "people" made my stomach drop. One night, Ron handed me my diary at dinner. "I found this on the floor." He flipped it open casually. It's not nice to write things behind people's backs. My mom's fork froze halfway to her mouth. My throat dried up so fast I couldn't swallow. "You read it?" I whispered. He leans back. "If you don't want people reading things, maybe don't write lies." "They weren't lies," I whispered. He smirked. "Sure they weren't." Mom didn't defend me. Not once. Later that night, I heard them arguing softly behind their bedroom door. Except it wasn't an argument. It was Ron lecturing and Mom apologizing. Apologizing for me. It hit me then, not in a dramatic movie moments way, but in a cold, quiet way, that my mother had already chosen him, and she'd keep choosing him. The next few years blurred together in a haze of small humiliations. Ron complaining that I left fingerprints on the fridge. Ron snapping if my shoes weren't lined up perfectly. Ron telling me I looked at him funny. Ron grounding me for being disrespectful when I literally hadn't said a word. But the worst wasn't Ron. It was the way Mom changed. The way she went still whenever he entered a room. The way she laughed too quickly at his jokes. The way she touched his arm when he was irritated, like she thought her hand could calm the storm inside him. She started watching me with the same suspicion he did. One afternoon, she said, "Ron thinks you don't like him. That hurts him." It sounded like a warning. It felt like a betrayal. I learned to hide my expressions, my reactions, my breathing. I learned to lie by saying nothing at all. The night everything shifted, the night childhood ended for me, was a Tuesday. I was 14. Ron came home late, angrier than usual, fists clenched, jaw locked tight. Mom rushed to him like a shadow, asking what was wrong, but he shoved past her like she wasn't even there. He saw me sitting at the table doing homework and said, "What the hell are you staring at?" I shook my head quickly. "Nothing, I was just—" He slammed his hand on the table so hard my pencil rolled off the edge. Mom gasped. I froze. Then he leaned down, his face inches from mine, his breath sour with cigarettes. "You better learn your place in this house," he whispered. "You don't speak unless you're spoken to." I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. Mom whispered, "Ron, please." He didn't even look at her, just straightened up, adjusted his jacket, and walked down the hall like he hadn't just scared the life out of a teenager. Later that night, I heard Mom crying behind her bedroom door. I pressed my forehead to the wood and whispered, "Mom, are you okay?" Silence. Then bed springs shifting. Then Ron's voice, low and sharp. "Don't baby her. That's the problem." Mom didn't answer. She didn't open the door. She didn't come check on me. I sat on the floor until my legs fell asleep, really realizing that whatever mother I had before Ron was never coming back. The house felt like it was swallowing me whole. A week later, I found something that changed everything. Ron had left one of his folders out, thick, overstuffed, with papers sticking out at odd angles. I shouldn't have touched it. I knew that, but curiosity and fear have a way of drowning sense. Inside were documents, contracts, signatures that didn't look real, invoices that didn't match the companies listed, and photos of him with people who looked like they belonged in mugshots. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would bruise my ribs. And then I heard him behind me. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice was soft, terrifyingly soft. When I turned around, he wasn't yelling, he wasn't even moving. He was just watching me with a calm expression that didn't match the furious red rising in his face. He closed the folder slowly, deliberately. "Curiosity," he said, "is a dangerous habit." I backed away, pulse hammering. He stepped closer and closer until my back hit the wall. "Don't go through my things," he said, "unless you want trouble." He didn't touch me. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. Ron came home 20 minutes later. She didn't notice I had been crying. Ron handed her the folder like nothing happened and kissed her cheek. She smiled at him like he hung the moon. That night, I realized something that shook me so deeply I felt it in my bones. I wasn't safe. Not from Ron, not from Mom's denial, not from the walls of that house. And part of me knew, even at 14, that one day I'd have to get out, or I'd end up buried under everything he hid, everything she refused to see. Not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I became something like smoke, always present but impossible to hold, slipping into corners, drifting through rooms without sound, without weight. Ron liked the house quiet, so I learned to match it. Ron liked people obedient, so I learned to shrink myself down until I barely had a pulse. And my mother, she liked whatever Ron liked. That was the rule nobody wrote, but everybody obeyed. When a home starts feeling like a borderline crime scene,
By the time I hit 15, I'd learned the signs of Ron's mood before he even walked in the door. The way the car door slammed, short and sharp, meant he was irritated. Long and slow meant he was furious. The rhythm of his footsteps on the porch, heavy meant drunk, uneven meant something went wrong with his deals. Silent meant danger.
The sound of the keys hitting the table, tossed, meant he was pissed. Placed gently meant he was hiding it. And the house reacted like a scared animal. Mom would rush to greet him, smoothing her shirt, fixing her hair, adjusting her expression so fast it made me dizzy. I would slip into the smallest spaces I could find, my room, the laundry room, sometimes the backyard if the weather didn't give me away. If he didn't see me, he couldn't comment on me. If he didn't comment on me, he couldn't break me down. That was the math of living with Ron. Simple, cold, predictable in the most unpredictable way. His control wasn't loud, it was surgical. People always imagine men like Ron as loud, violent, explosive. He wasn't. He didn't need to be. His cruelty was precise. If I said, "Good morning," and he wasn't in the mood for my existence, he'd say, "Tone down the attitude." If I walked into the kitchen while he was there, he'd sigh and say, "Jesus, you're always in the way." If I laughed too loudly while talking to a friend on the phone, he'd knock on my door and say, "You laugh like you want attention." But if I stayed quiet, he'd tell Mom I was withdrawn and disrespectful. There was no winning. I wasn't supposed to win. I was supposed to break. But I didn't. Not fully. Not permanently. Something in me refused to die in that house, even when I was bone-deep tired of existing in the same walls as Ron. The illegal stuff became part of the wallpaper. You know how kids get used to weird things because they don't know they're weird? That was me. I got used to strange men coming into the house when Mom was running errands. I got used to stacks of money hidden in cereal boxes. I got used to hearing Ron's voice drop into that low rasp he used when he threatened someone over the phone. "Don't play with me. I know where you live. You think I won't come get what's mine?" I got used to the way he'd freeze if he saw a police car drive slow past our street. I got used to Mom pretending her hands weren't shaking when she poured him a drink. Eventually, I even got used to pretending I didn't see anything, because the more Ron thought I saw, the more dangerous he became. The girls at school thought I was mysterious. If only they knew. I wasn't mysterious. I was scared. Every day, every hour. School was the only place I breathed without measuring each inhale. But even there, the fear crawled under my ribs like a nervous animal. I couldn't focus on tests, couldn't join clubs, couldn't hang out after school. Ron didn't like wasting time on childish things. So I'd sit in the bathroom stall during lunch, scrolling on my phone with the volume off, swallowing down tears that didn't even feel connected to anything specific. Teachers would say, "You seem tired. Everything okay at home? You're so quiet lately." But there's no universe where a 15-year-old girl says, "Well, my stepfather is laundering money, threatening people, and breaking my mother piece by piece, but thanks for asking." So I'd smile and say, "I'm fine." Those two words carried my entire life on its back. Ron decided my future before I even had one. He hated the idea of me leaving the house someday. I don't know if it was control, ego, paranoia, or all three. Whenever college came up, he'd snort. "College is a scam, waste of money. Your scholarship won't cover everything. You'll end up in debt. Who's gonna help your mother if you run away to live some stupid fantasy?" Mom echoed him, repeated his words like she was reading a script. "She's right here, Ron. We're not talking about—" He'd glare. She'd shrink. Then she'd say, "Ron just wants what's best for you." But best for me always meant convenient for him, safe for him, within his reach. If he could have cut my future down to the size of that house, he would have. And maybe he almost did, because I almost believed him. I almost believed I wasn't made for anything bigger. Almost. The day he destroyed something I loved, I had one thing that was mine. A photo of me and my dad taken when I was 4. He was holding me on his shoulders, and we were both laughing so hard our eyes were squeezed shut. My dad died when I was 9. That photo was basically the last time I felt uncomplicated happiness. I kept it hidden under my mattress, inside a book. One night, I came home from school and found the photo on my desk, ripped in half. Ron was sitting in my desk chair like it was his throne. He held the 2 torn pieces between his fingers. "These were under your mattress. Why are you hiding things in my house?" I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. I felt like someone punched a hole through my chest. He smirked. "You don't need this kind of shit from the past. Move on." Move on. Like my dad was a bad habit. Like love was clutter. Like memories were unacceptable. My mother walked in a second later, saw the torn photo, and went pale. "Ron, why did you—" He pointed at me. "Ask her why she's hiding things." Mom closed her eyes, like she was trying to not scream. Then she said, "Sweetie, you should have told us you still had this." That was the moment something inside me cracked. Something small and fragile I'd been trying to protect. Not because Ron destroyed the photo, but because she defended him instead of me. Again. Always. Forever. That was when I started saving evidence. I didn't plan it at first. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. I took pictures of documents when he wasn't home, screenshotted messages on his phone when he left it charging, saved receipts, notes, envelopes, random slips of paper covered in numbers. I started hiding them in places nobody would check: my pillowcase, the lining of my backpack, the inside of a tampon box. I didn't know what I'd do with them. I didn't even know if they were useful. I just knew Ron was dangerous, and someday someone would need proof. Maybe that someone would be me. The night he finally lost control. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. It was a nothing moment, the quiet kind that you forget until it becomes the moment that defined your entire life. He asked why I wasn't talking at dinner. I said I'm tired. He slammed his fist on the table. "Don't use that tone with me." Mom whispered, "Ron, please." He shoved his chair back so hard it screeched across the floor. "You think I don't see the way you look at me?" he snapped. "You think I don't know you hate me?" My throat was so tight I couldn't swallow. He pointed at me, face red, eyes wild. "You will never escape this house. Do you hear me? Never." Mom cried. I froze. He stormed out. And something inside me whispered, "Yes, I will. I have to." Because if I didn't escape him, I'd become like my mother, a ghost dressed like a woman. The moment that became a turning point. That same night, I packed a small bag, nothing drastic, just enough to feel like I had a choice. A change of clothes, the torn photo of my dad taped back together with trembling hands, the evidence I'd collected. I didn't run that night. Not yet. But I slept with the bag under my bed like a lifeline, a promise to myself, a future he couldn't control. I didn't know when I'd leave. I didn't know how. But I knew something with absolute clarity. I was done pretending, done shrinking, done surviving in a house that wanted me small and silent. The only question left was when I'd finally break free. And the answer came sooner than I expected. Much sooner. Because within months, Ron would make a mistake, a big one. And I'd finally find the crack in his armor, the one that would end him. But that part of the story comes later. For now, all you need to know is this. That night, when he roared, "You will never escape this house," I whispered into the dark, "Watch me." Not a new version of myself, a stronger one, sharper, smarter, quiet, but in a way that held power instead of fear. But before I became that woman, I had to become someone who could survive on her own. And that didn't happen overnight. The day I finally left. It wasn't cinematic. There were no suitcases, no screaming, no dramatic slamming of doors. It was early on a Tuesday morning. The sky was gray, the house was cold, and Ron was still asleep. the heavy kind of sleep he sunk into after drinking until he couldn't stand straight. My mother stood at the stove, stirring oatmeal like she was afraid of disturbing the silence. I walked into the kitchen with my backpack slung over my shoulder, the same one that held everything I'd collected: photos, receipts, email screenshots, money transfers, scribbled notes that looked harmless until you actually knew what they meant. Mom looked up at me with tired eyes. "School?" she asked softly. "Yeah," I said. But she noticed something in my voice. Maybe the steadiness, maybe the decision finally settling in my bones. Her stirring slowed. "You're acting different." I nodded. "Because I'm leaving today." Her spoon froze in midair. I didn't whisper it. I didn't cower. I said it like it was already happening, like the future had finally arrived and I was just stepping into it. Her face went pale. Not with anger, with fear. "Ron will never let you," she whispered. I took a deep breath. "I'm not asking him." She stared at me for a long time, too long. Then her eyes softened in the smallest, saddest way. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't grab my wrist. She didn't run to wake him up. She just said, in a voice that barely held together, "Be safe." It was the closest thing to love she'd given me in years. It felt like a goodbye, not to me, but to the version of her that used to be brave. I walked out of the house without looking back. It felt like stepping out of a cage I'd lived in for so long I forgot the world had air. The first place that felt like freedom. I moved into a dorm 2 states away. The financial aid office practically built me an escape hatch. Scholarships, grants, work study. But the best part? Nobody knew Ron. Nobody knew my mother. Nobody knew the scared girl I used to be. I could breathe. I could exist. I could talk without waiting for someone to flinch. I still had nightmares. Ron in the doorway, Ron tearing things apart, Ron telling me I'd never escape. But I learned to wake up and remind myself, you're not there anymore. He can't reach you here. You won, even if the war wasn't over yet. How trauma shaped my ambition. I didn't just go to college, I devoured it. Classes, research jobs, extracurriculars, anything that kept me moving forward. I studied criminal justice, then financial crimes, then digital forensics. Funny, right? The girl who grew up pretending she didn't see anything grew into the woman who specialized in exposing everything. Every class felt like sharpening a blade. Every skill felt like preparing for a battle I hadn't started fighting yet. People admired my drive, my discipline, my focus. They didn't know it was survival. They didn't know I studied harder every time I remembered Ron counting stacks of cash on our kitchen table. They didn't know I stayed late in the lab every time I remembered him threatening people over the phone. And they definitely didn't know that every certificate I earned felt like a stepping stone toward the moment I'd finally take him down. Not out of anger, out of justice, out of protection for the girl I used to be, and every girl like her who never gets out. The first time Mom called me. I hadn't spoken to her in a year. Then one night my phone lit up with her name. My hands shook. I let it ring out. She called again, and again. On the 4th call, I answered. She didn't say hello. She just whispered, "Are you safe?" It broke something in me, not because she asked, but because she sounded like she was asking for herself. "Yeah," I said. "I'm safe." There was silence. Then she whispered, "Good. That's good." Before she hung up, she said, "Be safe." It was the closest thing to love she'd given me in years. It felt like a goodbye, not to me, but to the version of her that used to be brave. I walked out of the house without looking back. It felt like stepping out of a cage I'd lived in for so long I forgot the world had air. The evidence became a lifeline. Over the years, the evidence I collected became more than just memories of fear. It became a map. A timeline. A clear outline of what Ron had been involved in: fraud, money laundering, illegal asset transfers, threats, unregistered cash movements. I kept everything in an encrypted drive protected by layers of passwords and digital traps I designed myself. And with every new thing I learned in school, I understood more and more about what I actually had. By 22, I knew for a fact Ron wasn't just shady. He wasn't just dangerous. He was criminally stupid. And the kind of stupid that wounds people, hurts families, destroys everything it touches. But I didn't go after him yet. I wasn't ready. Not fully. I needed more. More training, more proof, more distance from the girl who feared his footsteps. The woman I became didn't fear him anymore. By 26, I had a job in data security, specializing in uncovering financial fraud. My boss used to joke, "You're too good at finding dirt. It's like you've been training for this since childhood." If only he knew. I made good money, real money, the kind that pays for your mother's therapy, which I offered more than once. She always refused. The kind that gives you choices you never had growing up. But the best part? I wasn't scared of him anymore. I wasn't scared of his voice, his anger, his threats, his control. If he walked into a room, I wouldn't have shrunk. I would have stared him down, because I wasn't the girl hiding evidence anymore. I was the woman who knew exactly how to use it. The breaking point for my mother. One night, my mother called. She was whispering again, but this time, her whisper was different. Not scared, broken. "Ron hit me tonight," she said quietly. "For the first time." My stomach twisted. I'd always known the emotional abuse would turn physical eventually. Men like Ron always escalate. "Mom, are you okay?" I asked. "No, I'm not. I'm tired, baby. I'm so tired." My breath caught. She wasn't just scared. She was done. Done defending him. Done pretending. Done shrinking. She cried until she could barely breathe. I listened, gripping my phone so hard my hand went numb. When she finally calmed a little, she whispered, "I should have protected you. I should have left him years ago. I'm so sorry." And for the first time in my life, my mother apologized. Not excuses, not deflection, not blame. A real apology. Something inside me softened just a little, but another part of me hardened. If Ron thought hitting my mother was the worst decision he ever made, he was wrong. The worst decision he ever made was giving me a reason to stop waiting. The moment I knew it was time. "Do you want to leave him?" I asked. My mother hesitated. "I don't know how," she whispered. "He controls everything. The accounts, the bills, the house, me." I closed my eyes. I had always been waiting for the right moment, a clear signal, a reason that wasn't revenge, something moral, something grounded, and this was it. This was the moment the scared girl inside me handed the grown woman her purpose. "Mom," I said softly, "I can help you." She breathed in sharply. "How?" I opened my laptop, loaded the encrypted drive. All the documents, photos, notes, receipts, emails, voice recordings, 7 years of collected truth, the kind of evidence prosecutors dream of. "I have everything," I said quietly, "everything he's ever done, and I think it's time we hand it over." There was silence on the line, then a single, shaking breath. "Yes," she said. "Yes, please." And that was the moment I knew. Not for revenge. Not even for justice, for freedom, my mother's, mine, and the girl I used to be, the one who hid evidence with shaking hands and prayed no one would hear her heartbeat. I wasn't afraid anymore, and that alone made me dangerous. The night before everything went down, I flew back to my hometown under a fake reason, work conference, quick weekend visit, whatever lie made the least noise. When I checked into a small hotel 2 miles from my childhood home, I felt something strange settle in my chest, a calmness I'd never felt before. Not peace, not relief, just certainty. My mother met me there. When she walked through the door, she looked older than she should have been. Tired eyes, a bruise half faded down her arm, shoulders caved like she was carrying 20 years of regret. She froze when she saw me. Then she burst into tears. I caught her before she fell. We didn't talk for a long time. We just held each other and cried. Quiet, shaking, broken, healing tears. "I should have protected you," she whispered into my hair. "I'm protecting us both now," I whispered back. That night, we sat at the small hotel desk and opened everything. The laptop, the external drive, the files I'd spent years collecting like pieces of a truth no one wanted to see. When my mother saw the first document, a bank transfer Ron had forced her to sign on her account, she gasped like she'd been punched in the chest. "You kept all this? For how long?" "Since I was 16. She looked at me like she finally saw the extent of the damage, the depth of the wounds, the childhood she had failed to understand. Her voice cracked. "Baby, you went through all this alone?"
I swallowed hard. Not anymore. Walking into the police department. The next morning, we drove to the precinct. No music, just the hum of the engine and my mother's heartbeat echoing in the tiny, silent car. She kept glancing at me, not scared for herself, but terrified of what Ron would do if he found out. "What if they don't believe us?" she whispered. "They will," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't waver, because confidence wasn't a feeling now. It was a habit. When we stepped inside, the air was cold, too bright, too still. A young officer approached the desk. "How can I help you two?" For a second, my mother froze, so I stepped forward. "My name is Ava Carver. I have evidence of fraud, money laundering, and coercion by Ronald Carver, enough to open a full investigation." The officer blinked, then blinked again, and then everything started moving fast. Detectives, interview rooms, USB ports, statements, lawyers, printed documents laid out like the blueprint of Ron's secret life. They asked how I got everything. I told them the truth. He never thought I was smart enough to understand what he was doing. He never imagined I'd save it. One of the detectives, a woman, stared at me in quiet shock. "You've been holding this for years?" I nodded. She exhaled slowly. "You might have just built one of the cleanest cases I've seen." My mother broke down right then, shoulders shaking, hands covering her face, years of fear collapsing into the quietest sobs. The detective offered her a tissue. "You and your daughter did the right thing," she said softly. "I promise you, he won't touch either of you again." For the first time in my life, I believed those words. The arrest. They didn't wait. They couldn't. Everything I had, the recordings, the hidden ledgers, the photos of cash bundles, the messages, made the case urgent. They arrested him that same afternoon. My mother and I watched from inside an unmarked car across the street. She gripped my hand so tightly my fingers went numb. Ron walked out of the house wearing that same smug half-smirk he always wore when he thought he controlled everything. An officer approached him, said his name, pulled out the warrant. The smirk vanished. He shouted at first, the same volume he used when breaking dishes, the same tone he used when blaming my mother for things she didn't do. But the officers didn't care. They cuffed him. He kept yelling, twisting, threatening lawsuits, threatening the police, threatening my mother. Then the lead detective stepped forward and said something I'll never forget. "Your daughter turned everything over." Silence. A long, heavy, stunned silence. Ron froze. His eyes scanned the street, searching. And then he saw me, standing there, not hiding, not shrinking, not afraid. He stumbled back like I'd hit him. "You," he spit out. "How could you do this to me?"
I held his gaze through the car window. "I didn't do this to you," I said quietly. "You did this to yourself." For the first time in his life, his fear was louder than his anger. The trial. It didn't take months. It took years. Court appearances, depositions, my testimony, my mother's testimony, financial experts, digital analysts. Ron tried everything, denying, blaming, twisting, playing the victim. He claimed I misunderstood everything, that I was brainwashed, that I was seeking attention, but prosecutors ate him alive. Every lie he told fell apart under the weight of the truth I'd carried for so long. The judge, at one point, looked directly at me and said, "You saved a lot of people from being hurt further. What you did took courage most adults never develop." I nodded, but inside, something twisted, because courage didn't feel heroic. It felt like survival. It felt like becoming someone I never planned to be. My mother's apology, the real one. After one of the hearings, we sat in my car. The sun was setting orange behind the courthouse, painting her face in soft light. She stared at her hands for a long, long time. Then she said, "Ava, I don't deserve you." My throat tightened. She continued, "I should have left him the first time he yelled at you, the first time he made you cry. I should have believed you, protected you, listened to you." I swallowed hard, trying to hold myself together. I wasn't a mother. I was a coward. I turned toward her. "You were scared," I said softly. "That's not an excuse," she whispered. "But it's the truth," I said. "And we both lived under him. We both survived him. Now we're getting out. Together." She broke down, crying again, but this time the tears were different. Not regretful. Releasing. She leaned her forehead against mine. "I'm so proud of the woman you became," she whispered. "You didn't just escape him, you saved me." My chest cracked open. I whispered, "I just wanted you to come with me." And she whispered back, "I'm here now." That was enough. The sentence. Ron got 24 years. Financial crimes, coercion, threats, unregistered assets, tax evasion, forgery, fraud. The judge didn't hold back. My mother cried when the sentence was read. I didn't. I just exhaled, a slow, steady, cleansing breath. It felt like something heavy finally slipped off my shoulders. Not immediately, not completely, but enough. Enough to stand taller, enough to breathe, enough to move forward. The final scene, my quiet revenge. 1 year after sentencing, I returned to the house I grew up in, not to reclaim it, to empty it, to close it. It was quiet, dusty, empty in the way abandoned memories always feel empty. I walked through every room. The kitchen where he slammed cabinets, the hall where he yelled until the walls shook, the bedroom where my mother cried silently, the doorway where I once hid documents under loose floorboards. When I reached the living room, I stood in the exact spot where I had once stood as a scared 16-year-old girl, holding a flash drive like it was a lifeline. I closed my eyes and whispered to her, the younger me, "You made it out." It felt right. It felt full circle. On my way out, I locked the door behind me, not because I needed to, because I wanted to, because this time, I was the one closing things. When we pulled away, me driving, my mother in the passenger seat, she reached over and rested her hands on mine. "You never became what he tried to make you," she said softly. I smiled faintly. "No," I whispered. "I became what he feared." The car rolled forward, the house shrank in the rearview mirror, and for the first time in decades, my future didn't feel like something I had to run toward. It felt like something I had built with my own 2 hands, something no one could take from me. Not anymore.